If you're new to the channel, you may not even know that a few years ago we built a house, and we filmed the entire process and introduced all of the subcontractors and showed a lot of the processes that are part of building a house, and it was hard and it almost exhausted us, but we're pretty well healed up now. And so this video is going to show you and talk about some of the things that were done, that we did, that could only be described as mistakes, that didn't make it through the final editing process and into the videos that you can find in the playlist about the Spec house. The first mistake was in the retaining wall, which was a big part of the project. And it was a communication mistake, the way most mistakes start out, between the engineer and I. I did not communicate well enough either in conversation or in drawing, and he did not receive my intention clear enough. So when I stacked the boulders, or when Dexter stacked the boulders around the perimeter and did such a beautiful job, and the engineer got a look at it, he said, "Wait! That is creating too much surcharge on the wall, and you have to flatten out that pitch, reduce the load on that wall in order for it to perform appropriately over time." So we did, but it still saddens me. The second mistake was only partially a mistake, and it was that we picked a very complicated house plan that was really almost more than I could handle by myself, which was essentially what was going on. Now, I was not by myself. I had help, but it was a big and complicated design on a small and access-restricted lot, and so it just built in layers of complication and time and effort and expense that just wouldn't belong in what would really be thought of as a spec house paradigm, where you're creating all the square footage you can for as little cost as you can in order to make it affordable. Well, this house was not affordable to build, but in our defense, it was perfect for creating the narrative and the examples and the situations that would demonstrate different processes on a YouTube channel. Next, I think, would be the decision to use an old-fashioned tar paper underlayment on the roof instead of using tiger paw or some synthetic underlayment. I really wasn't aware that they even existed, and the comments immediately began talking about it, and we just sort of discounted that because frankly, the tar paper was less expensive, but not much less expensive compared to the convenience and longevity and safety that tiger paw and the synthetic underlayments provide on a job. So, yeah, that was a clear swing and a miss. Anytime you think about putting underlayment down under a roof, make sure it's tiger paw or some other synthetic magic material. Now, Milgard windows are great, and their guarantee is second to none, as far as I know, in the window industry. But the item that probably should have been thought over more carefully was the color, because the black color is handsome from the outside, but on a vinyl window can flake off and can be easily damaged. So if you want black windows, I recommend you get an aluminum-clad wood casement. The aluminum is bulletproof and paintable and will stand up to the abuse of installation and maintenance over time. The only mistake that was made on the roofing that I know of was in the roof-to-wall flashing where the dormer dies into the porch roof. I wish I would have cut those flashing pieces into shorter pieces, because over a 10 or a 12-foot distance, that lower flange oil cans just a little bit. It can raise up and lay down as it heats and cools. And if the pieces would have been shorter, there would have been less expansion and contraction within the piece itself, and I think it would have laid down flatter on that roof. In general, the concrete on this job went just as well as it could have gone. But the little wing wall, the little wing extension of the retaining wall on the uphill end of the house was put on after the main retaining wall process. And I called the batch plant and ordered some mud, and they said, "Hey, we've got a truck with a mixed design on it that we just put in the downtown improvement that was going on in Roseburg. You want that?" And I said, "Well, what's it like?" And they told me, and I thought, well, yeah, why not? Bring it on up. And we poured it out. But it was a different color, slightly but unmistakably a different color than the standard mixed design pump mix that 50-50 pump mix, I think, that we'd been using on the rest of the retaining walls. And sure enough, there was a color problem that will probably always be a color problem, and a reminder that sometimes you just can't accommodate a choice in concrete mix design that is made for convenience instead of necessity. So I've just got a couple left, and one of them is an accident, and one of them was just, a mountain that we just couldn't climb. And so, are they mistakes? Maybe. And the first one is there's some space under the landing in the stairway that goes up, the second stairway, not the main stairway, but the secondary stairway. There's some space under the landing, and it would have been great to access it. But, you do the cost-benefit analysis of how hard it is to get access and what good is the space really, and the decision was, nope, we're going to save that for whatever pests want to inhabit that space. But it just wasn't worth capturing, even if there would have been days where it would have been handy. And then the last mistake or accident happened during the open house, actually. And I was so exhausted by that point, it just about tipped me over. But the thing that saved me was the blessing that it was to have hundreds of folks from all over the country and some from outside of the country come to see the house and get acquainted and visit. And it was wonderful. But somewhere in the melee of having all my friends walking through the house and talking and looking things over, somehow the pot filler over the stove got left on a little bit or turned on a little bit or something. And a fair amount of water leaked down onto the hardwood floor behind the stove and then under the hardwood floor. And so after the open house was all over and we thought we were going to be able to move on, we had to bring Steve Triplett back, and he worked some magic. He pulled out, maybe 200 or 300 square feet. And he pulled it out and placed it and sanded it and stained it and made it beautiful again. And it was a relief, and the project was done. It was a period in my life and in Nate's life that we will never forget. We can now look back on it and laugh about some things and feel some gratitude for the process, but at the time it was full-blown survival mode. But it was a thing that you could never anticipate, and you don't think you're going to survive it. I will always be thankful for having that experience with my son and my family and my friends and my subcontractors who had saved me for decades, and they saved me again. You can't overstate the value of friends, and especially if you're lucky enough to have friends who become part of your business model. I hope that you enjoyed watching the Spec House be built. If you didn't watch it happen, you can go back and check it out. We've got a whole bunch of videos, and you will notice now that some of the items I just described are conveniently overlooked. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.